thank you so much for being here. This is our first ever press conference that we've done on the behalf of North Dakota. And while I would love to tell you all about the many wonderful things we have to do across our state, all the rich culture and scenic beauty and all of the wonderful attractions we have, today we're going to focus in a little bit on one particular area. It is often said that North Dakota made Theodore Roosevelt, and in turn, Roosevelt helped shape America. In the mid-1800s, Theodore Roosevelt was a young and brokenhearted, and he headed off to find healing in the Badlands, and he found way more than healing. And we celebrate that across North Dakota. Across the state, you'll find everything from, I think we probably have more grade schools, Roosevelt Elementary, than any place else. But additionally, there's trails, there's bronze statues, there's museums, schools, roadways, and of course the iconic Theodore Roosevelt National Park. We have a great team here with us today, and so I'm super excited to talk today about the bold new chapter that's being written with the upcoming Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. At the heart of this ambitious effort is a fellow North Dakotan whose work and vision are bringing this dream to life. It's my pleasure to introduce Edward O'Keefe, who is the CEO of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library Foundation. He is a native of North Dakota, and he has 2 decades of media leadership experience, so he knows what it's like to be in your shoes. He has experience at ABC News and CNN, where he earned a Primetime Emmy for his collaboration with the late Anthony Bourdain. He is also a Georgetown graduate and a fellow of the Harvard Kennedy School, and author of the new book that's just recently released earlier this year, The Loves of Theodore Roosevelt. So it is my pleasure today to introduce you to Ed O'Keefe, who will then also introduce another special guest that we have a little later. So please join me in welcoming Ed.
Good morning. It is an honor to be with you. As Sarah mentioned, I had the great pleasure of working with the late, great Anthony Bourdain. He was someone who believed that travel and experiences could change your perspective, could change your life. And you are all people who understand its power, the power to wonder, to forge connection, to shape our sense of place and purpose. As Sarah mentioned, my name is Edward O'Keefe, and I serve as the CEO of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library, an institution we are building in a place that quite literally changed the course of American history. So let's take a look at what is coming soon to Medora, North Dakota.
TR, 2 letters. You already know who I'm talking about. He ushered in the American century, inspired action and fearless participation in the arena. Theodore Roosevelt doesn't have a presidential library, so we're going to build one. The Badlands, North Dakota, in the jagged hills and impossible buttes of a broken land where a broken man found resilience and first lived the strenuous life. This is the fulcrum of the hero's journey, a place where nature challenges and restores. Dreamers become doers, the cradle of conservation. Teddy was no ordinary president. This will be no ordinary library. A museum of the future. Immersive storytelling in a place you must experience. The first fully digitized library for an analog president. A place to gather, as we have for centuries, around a campfire that unites us. The next generation of leaders learning from, not just about, TR. A platform accessible beyond the Badlands, connecting people everywhere. Our mission is to explore Theodore Roosevelt's life, legacy, and enduring relevance. To invite you to find yourself, as TR did, in the Badlands. To dare greatly, think boldly, live passionately, care deeply. Join us on this journey. Get in the arena.
So we are building the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library on a bluff overlooking the Little Missouri River at the gateway to Theodore Roosevelt National Park, which is the only U.S. national park named for a person, let alone a president. a place where TR himself said, "It is a land of vast silent spaces, of lonely rivers, and of plains where the wild game stare at the passing horsemen." This is not a typical presidential library. It is not built of granite in a capital city. It is born of soil and sky. It is of the land. The library, as we say, is the landscape. And it is because of that, it invites a different kind of engagement and experience. It calls you to listen, to reflect, to act, to find yourself in the Badlands, just like TR. Theodore Roosevelt came to the Badlands in 1883 to hunt buffalo. He returned in 1884 to mourn. In the span of a single day, he lost his mother and his wife. To outrun grief, he saddled up and rode into the wild. "Black care," he said, "rarely sits behind a rider whose pace is fast enough." It was in North Dakota, the frontier, that Roosevelt found strength, not in solitude, but in purpose. He worked along ranch hands and cowboys. He faced blizzards, coyotes, and long silent nights. He forged bonds and friendships that lasted a lifetime, and it was here in North Dakota that the seeds of his conservation and sustainability ethic and civic courage took root. That is why we are building the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library in Medora, North Dakota. Not only because Roosevelt came here, but because he was made here. We believe the land itself is part of the story, and we want the library to inspire visitors to be participants, not just remember history, but to enter it. The library is designed by Snohetta, the renowned architectural firm behind the Norwegian Opera House in Oslo and the National September 11th Memorial Museum Pavilion in New York City. But this building doesn't rise above the landscape, it melds into it. The roof is a living prairie. It echoes the 65 million years of geologic history spreading out like a textbook around you and calling the visitor to adventure. It echoes the hills, and we're building to meet the living building challenge, which means generating our own energy, treating our own water. It means that we will do it all in harmony with nature. Zero waste, zero water, zero emissions, and zero energy. It is the most rigorous conservation standard a museum has ever undertaken in the world. There are just 35 buildings in the entire world that have achieved the full LBC certification, and 20 of them are private residences. Not one is a 100,000 square foot museum on 93 pristine acres. We are not just conserving Roosevelt's memory, we are extending his legacy. Participants and visitors to the TR Library can see a living example of conservation and sustainability in action. And while we are also rooted in place, we are connected to a larger journey. The library forms a new TR triangle, connecting Yellowstone National Park to the west, Mount Rushmore to the south, and the library in the east. These three iconic American Western destinations are tied by geography, landscape, and history. Just steps away from our site is the town of Medora, a historic Western cowboy town that pulses with character. With its summer musical, its wooden boardwalks, and the charm of a town that time never quite caught, Medora is a rare and authentic American gem. It's like you just walked into the set of Yellowstone, with a little less violence. Medora has long welcomed travelers, but it is just beginning to be fully discovered by generations of curious bucket list travelers. Inside the library, we don't just tell you about Theodore Roosevelt, we invite you to walk with him. Your journey begins not in the White House, but in a warm Victorian parlor in New York City. A sickly boy named Teedy reads adventure stories while his mother Mitty spins tales from her time in the South, and his father Thee, a Northerner, instills in him a sense of responsibility, empathy, and civic duty. From there, you step into young Roosevelt's childhood museum, a cabinet of curiosities, where you learn by doing. It's built by Theodore Roosevelt's imagination, taxidermy, drawings, letters, his early obsessions with nature, science, and discovery come alive in what we call the Roosevelt Museum of Natural History. Then we follow TR West on the memory train through the heartbreak of losing his mother and his wife in the same house on the same day, Valentine's Day, 1884. That grief carried Theodore into the Badlands, where he finds healing in nature. And then in the Elkhorn Ranch, you'll see the landscape as TR saw it: silence, resilience, self-discovery, and renewal. There is a healing quality to the Badlands that every visitor, from TR to the visitor today, feels. Next, participants gather around a storytelling campfire to hear cowboy tales, then saddle up for ranch activities where guests, young and old, can rope, ride, and just get a little bit of the taste of the physical grit of frontier life. In Dickinson, you'll hear Roosevelt's voice begin to change from city slicker to adventurer to orator. He speaks of citizenship and character, the majesty of the great American West, words that are still true and resonate today. From there, we head into the rough and tumble world of New York politics and then into war. You'll step inside a pre-battle tent, then charge up Kettle Hill with Roosevelt and the Rough Riders, the ragtag group of cowboys, elites, professional athletes, Buffalo Soldiers, and Native Americans who fought in the Spanish-American War. You'll feel the weight of TR's command and the pride of courage. And then on to the presidency. At 42, Theodore Roosevelt remains the youngest president in American history. We create his rambunctious White House, not just rooms, but the decisions. In Run Your Own Presidency, you'll face Roosevelt's actual challenges, from conservation to civil rights, and see what kind of leader you might be. You'll meet the White House gang, his 6 children, and his many pets: Josiah the Badger, Emily the Snake, Algonquin the Pony, and the family room. You'll see the heart behind his public life, his partnership with his wife, Edith, his unequivocally entertaining daughter, who's known as Princess Alice. Theodore Roosevelt was once asked, he said, "I can either run the country or I can control Alice, but I cannot possibly do both." And it was Alice who later in her life had a pillow in her living room that said, "If you have nothing nice to say, come sit by me." We don't stop there. You'll experience TR's his post-presidential life, his expedition in Africa, going down the river of doubt in the Amazon, and the campaign trail as a bull moose candidate independent in 1912, surviving an assassination attempt and going on to give a 60-minute speech with a bullet lodged in his chest. Finally, you'll arrive at Sagamore Hill, TR's home, and then step into the Legacy Gallery, where we turn the question back to you. You discover that this museum is not actually only about TR, it's about you. What will you change in the world? We close with the People's Library, a space built for tomorrow. Powered by Microsoft, accessible from anywhere, it's a platform designed to connect students, scholars, and storytellers to Roosevelt's life and ideas with the tap of a finger. From beginning to end, the library is a journey, not just through Roosevelt's life, but through the values that shaped America. And by the time you leave, we hope you won't just admire Roosevelt. We hope you'll feel ready to join him and get in the arena of your own life. And throughout your visit, you'll use a Trailblazer Compass, our immersive mobile and wearable platform with AI-powered guidance. You'll earn badges, unlock stories, and carry your experience forward long after you've left. It's the start of a new kind of relationship between visitor and institution, one that lasts not just a few hours, but an entire lifetime. And we're not stopping there. There is also a library of the future. We're working with Microsoft to build a groundbreaking digital platform that uses AI to make Roosevelt's archive, currently scattered across 33 collections in 18 institutions across the world, easily searchable, accessible, and interactive. Scholars, students, and storytellers around the world will be able to access Roosevelt's writings, letters, and legacy in new and meaningful ways. Whether you're in a classroom in Boston or a coffee shop in London, you'll be able to study Roosevelt's conservation policies, examine his handwritten speeches, or listen to his philosophies on courage and citizenship. In Medora, North Dakota, we are building a People's Presidential Library, one that invites everyone to take part, physically, digitally, emotionally. And we are proud to open our doors in 2026 on the 250th anniversary of the United States. We are an official America 250 site, a moment of reflection, inflection, and renewal for the nation. As we look to that moment, we are preparing not just to open a library, but to welcome the world. In fact, in 2026, Accent West, one of the signature gatherings of America's Western tourism community, will be held in Medora, and we hope you'll be among the first to experience everything the library in North Dakota has to offer. I invite you personally to reach out to our team, connect with Matt or Amy or Sarah here at IPW, whether interested in a media preview, a travel partnership, or simply being one of the first to walk the trails that Roosevelt once rode. We want to connect with you. We believe that travel itself is an act of getting in the arena, of choosing experience over indifference, of seeking stories and experiences that challenge and change us. That's the lesson I learned working with Tony Bourdain. The world is there to be discovered, and new and unique experiences can not just change your perspective, they can change your life, as they did for TR. Medora, North Dakota is more than a destination. It's a destiny. And now to hear a little bit more about that is TR himself.
Bully, President Ed O'Keefe of the Theodore Roosevelt Presidential Library. Thank you, sir. We're looking forward to all of you coming to visit us in Medora, North Dakota, a region of which I said it was where the romance of my life began. And I famously said I would have never been president, but for my experiences in North Dakota. You heard President O'Keefe used to work with Anthony Bourdain. He's working with the second fellow who likes his meals. We hope that you'll come and enjoy the Pitchfork Steak Fondue and an outdoor musical that's had over 4 million people in attendance. You might wonder why I brought my teddy bear, so that people can recognize me. I arrived at McCormick Place. One young man spotted me with my top hat. He said, "Look, there's the Monopoly dude." And if he knew his history half as well as you, he would have known I was the anti-Monopoly dude. And now this teddy bear is probably the most recognizable of my legacies. I was the 26th president of the United States. And until recently, I could claim that I was the only president born in New York City. But the other fellow, for some recency, he's from Queens. I'm a Manhattan boy. I'm glad to be in Chicago. It was here when I was governor of New York that I made a speech called The Strenuous Life at the Hamilton Society. I'm rather disappointed with Alexander Hamilton. Audiences are now asking me if I can rap. I can hardly even rhyme. The speech was translated by a woman of Italian descent. Olga, her brother, was a captain in the Italian army. He translated my speech from The Strenuous Life to the Italian, La Vita Vigorosa. I think he got the idea better than I did with that title. My life and legacy are a part of Europe and Africa and Asia. My Nobel Peace Prize, which I accepted in Oslo in Christiania, that was given for settling the Russo-Japanese War. The greatest work I ever did was the building of the Panama Canal, of course, not dug all by me, but the cartoonist made it appear so. And now, of course, the cruise ships upon which so many of your kind people are traveling go through the Panama Canal. When I was a young man, as a teenager, I toured Europe with my family, and we climbed Jungfrau. As a young man on my honeymoon, I climbed the Matterhorn. The most famous speech I ever made, quoted by President O'Keefe, was at the Sorbonne in Paris. And I marched in the funeral of King Edward VII of the United Kingdom, that in 1910. It was on this date, June 18th, 1910, that I returned to New York City after having been a year hunting in British East Africa, today Kenya, Uganda, Sudan, Egypt, and touring through the Mediterranean countries and Europe as well. In Medora, North Dakota, it was when I was a cattle rancher and is still today the Wild West, the west of the rancher, the west of the cowboy and the Indian. They call us the Western Edge. We're the edge of the Great Plains that originate here in the land of Lincoln and the edge of the Rocky Mountains just beyond us. We're on the way to Glacier and Yellowstone and Teton and Jackson Hole, and maybe you even might go to Mount Rushmore in South Dakota. I'm rather stone-faced there. Keep your eyes on the stars and your feet planted firmly on the ground. Believe you can? You're halfway there. For each and every one of you, and especially for the members of the press, I thank you for being here and spreading the message about North Dakota and American tourism. I want you to know that I was the first president to provide permanent office space for members of the press at the White House, something I'm sure many of my successors deeply regret. Here's to the Fourth Estate. Here's to international travel. We bid you welcome to Medora, North Dakota, to the entire beautiful state. We are the Peace Garden state. We love our neighbors from Canada, and our International Peace Garden straddles that border. So come and enjoy our hospitality, and come and visit us today at booth 2616. I'm the 26th president. My favorite president was the 16th, Abraham Lincoln. Welcome to Chicago and the land of Lincoln. Bully for the tour here. Thank you so very much for being here. We'll see you in North Dakota. Bully.